NBA draft, of course, that is quickly approaching, less than a week away. Next Thursday, we will hear names called, and markets are starting to go up a little bit more. I thought it was fascinating, though, because we talked about this yesterday, and while we were recording Hardwood Handicappers, Kelly, and while we were on the air just discussing it, there was a lot of movement in the NBA betting market when it came to the draft. And I thought it was worth at least highlighting a couple of them before we get to some of the surprising names that are starting to pop up, because now you're getting more information. And I would say that more information about now is probably going to be a little bit more accurate. But let's first talk about some of the odd shifts that we've seen when it comes to at least some of the props that have been up there for a while. First of which is, let's talk about second overall picks. So this was one that you had brought up just slowly but surely. We saw that the second overall pick odds for Brandon Miller were just moving in his direction steadily. And yet, here you go. Minus 250 was, I think, the peak price that I saw for him. As of this morning, minus 170. Again, this happened over the last 24 hours, so he's down to minus 170 to go second overall. Scoot Henderson, up to plus 110. Scoot Henderson to go third overall goes from minus 185 yesterday to minus 150. And I will say, this does come on the heels. I don't know if you listened yesterday, Kelly, but there was a podcast. Jonathan Givony and Zach Lowe and Bobby Marks. Yep. They did a podcast talking about the draft. And Jonathan Givony actually gave some more words to the workouts over the weekend. Scoot Henderson apparently killed the workout against Charlotte or for Charlotte. And Brandon Miller, he was actually there. They worked out together. Maybe not the best when it came to Brandon Miller's workout. Conditioning was an issue. But Givony still said that Miller would probably be the selection, just that the gap between them had shrunk. And on the heels of that podcast, what do you get? A shrink of the odds, right? Brandon Miller down to minus 170. The other, Amon Thompson over Asar Thompson. We've seen this climb back. Goes from minus 210 to minus 350. Again, this is over the course of the last 24 hours. And then Asar Thompson over Jarris Walker. Walker, all of a sudden, after sliding, in terms of the odds at least, is making a late push now. Asar Thompson got as high as minus 160, now minus 115. I think Walker's one of the interesting ones because, like I said, hadn't heard anything positive or anything. He just kept sliding because everybody else was moving up. Now, all of a sudden, you know what it reminds me of? It's like the quarterbacks, except at a lesser level, which is if you looked at C.J. Stroud, for a while, what did we know? It was going to be why is his name escaping me? Wow. Bryce Young. Yeah. It was Bryce Young, number 1, C.J. Stroud, number 2. Stroud kind of slips. Everybody's like, watch out, Stroud could fall. And then right at the time we get to the draft, what happens? Stroud was right back. He was going to be the second quarterback taken. Same thing here maybe with Jarris Walker. Like for a while, Walker was going to be like the fifth guy in that mix, whatever. He starts to slide, and now we're starting to see that snap back for Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting that feeling, because I didn't have a great NFL draft. I'm getting that feeling for number 2, number 3.
Right, yep.
Right? It was,
for
how long was it Scoot was at this time a year ago, we were talking about Scoot versus Wembanyama for the first overall pick, right? Like that. That's what we were talking about. And then a couple months later, it was like, all right, well, Wembanyama's obviously the number 1 pick, but Scoot's number 2 right behind it. And ever since, the NCAA tournament, we've had this shift towards Brandon Miller. And, could that same thing be happening at 2 and 3? And I'm going to probably vomit if it does.
Right.
Because I've got nice tickets on Brandon Miller, too, as do you, and Scoot 3. But yeah, I think the way to read into the rest of the top 10, I know we're going to look at odds here in a sec on those, but the Thompson brothers are the key to figuring out how this order is going to go.
Yep.
And JVZ, I don't know if anybody has a real firm handle on what's going to happen with those two guys. And a lot of it, not just them, has to do with teams too, right? Yep. Team needs and team trades and a lot of these reports of teams wanting to move up. But what you get, as far as kind of the big board, right, is just a big board of talent. It's a lot of guards after Victor Wembanyama, right? So there's going to be teams that even though they might be the more talented players, they might fall just because teams want a more secure big men or wing player from a college, right? I think that's what you're seeing with the, Hendricks of the world, the Walkers of the world, even Derek Lively out of Duke, right? I think there is at least a more sense of comfort for going after one of these big guys, wing players, instead of one of these unknown guards, which I think there's still a little bit of a feeling of.
Yep, absolutely. So you mentioned the top 10. So we have two massive favorites to land inside of the top 10, and that is rightfully so. Anthony Black is minus 3,000 to be a top 10 selection. This is an index prop, so you can't come in and bet the no. This is just odds to be drafted top 10. So Anthony Black at the top, minus 3,000. Taylor Hendricks, minus 2,000. I mentioned a surprising name that was tied to the Detroit Pistons in one of the most recent articles over the Athletic. Hendricks was one of them. Taylor Hendricks is one of the names apparently being thrown around for the Detroit Pistons at number 5. I would assume it's the way that the board breaks 1 through 4, depending on what the Detroit Pistons are going to do there. But Hendricks is, I think, one of those risers. Initially, his draft position prop 9.5, now 8.5. He does seem a near certainty to be selected in the top 10. So what's interesting here is, so let's take a look overall. In no particular order, Kelly, we're talking about Wembanyama, Brandon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. That's what you have to do first before looking at this market, right?
So it's Wembanyama, Brandon Miller. It is Scoot Henderson. It is Amin Thompson. It is Cam Whitmore. In no particular order either. I would say Asar Thompson, Jarris Walker are near certainties to be top 10 picks. Would you say that?
Yes,
I haven't seen.
And Taylor Hendricks.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything of it. So then, we're talking about up to 7. Let's go Taylor Hendricks. That would be 8. So really, you're trying to find wiggle room here when you're betting this on 2 guys. Anthony Black is probably one of them, and really, and I think this actually strengthens it, Anthony Black's been tied to the Washington Wizards in almost every single draft. Yep. Every mock draft that you look at, every single thing. I don't think I've seen a lot of mock drafts that don't have Anthony Black getting selected number 9.
And outside of that, JVT, I just haven't heard. It's another guy you haven't really heard much about, right? Like we heard about him all throughout the college basketball season as being a lottery pick, but then we really haven't heard much in the past, I don't know, 2 months.
Yep. And I have to tell you, I don't know what you would do with this market overall. Because if that's all certain, so we essentially have 9 selections that we're pretty sure are going to be top 10 picks. So of these guys, you're essentially saying which one's going to sneak into number 10. And if you look at it, the problem with it is that the 10th overall selection right now is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks, by all accounts, want to shop that pick. They wanted a top 10 pick for a reason, so they could use it to go do something. Because their roster's extremely thin. They don't know what's going to happen. They want to add a piece next to Luka Doncic and what they would hope would be Kyrie Irving. So you don't really know what the selection is going to be because I don't think we know the team who's making that 10th overall pick.
Yeah. I tend to think it's that Derek Lively has a really good chance of going with that 10th spot. But to your point, I think that it's so up in the air that I almost think you need to look further down the board. And the only name I'm going to bring up here that I would maybe consider is Bilal Coulibaly, the teammate of Victor Wembanyama, who he's just been rising. He's been rising as his teams continue to play. That's something that Luke brought up yesterday. It's a great point where all these other guys are just doing workouts and not playing right now. They've been playing. The Metropolitans have been playing up until what? It was a week ago? A week ago?
It's worth noting, Gavoni put in his latest mock draft that the Utah Jazz, who picked number 9, did send people just last week to go give him another look while he was playing. So there's at least interest there.
I think if you're looking at this, looking at these odds, I'd rather take a longer shot 5-1 price on him than Derek Lively, I think has a good chance of going in that top 10. But again, we're really only talking about kind of one pick here. At least if you assume, the Thompson twins, nothing's going to happen there, right? Nobody's going to fall like crazy. If we assume we kind of know 8 to 9 names, then I think you got to go with a longer shot here.
Yep, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, because everything
and
else.
And he's the only one. Any of these other guys, though, around his odds, have you even heard of going in the top 10?
Nah, so at one point early on, Jalen Hood-Schifino was a guy that maybe could have made it in there for upside. There was a couple of mock drafts that tied the Jazz to him, but that's been gone for a while now. He's now in the mid, 12 to 14 range from what I've seen. I think that's really the only name out of all of these. That's the only name that I've seen at least at one point in some mock drafts that I've read inside of the top 10. And to your point about Grady Dick, all accounts are he's one of those that has improved his stock because of the way that his offseason has gone in terms of workouts, in terms of the way that he's met with teams and whatnot. So we'll see if that's going to be the case. Lively's going to be a good center, but it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to be worth a top 10 selection.
Right.
Right,
which is, I think, that is the statement about him, right? I think does his game translate? I don't know. I think he took like 13 threes last year and made like 2 of them. So, is he good? What does that mean? Is that a guy that you're going to try to stretch the floor with more over time? Or no, are we just a 7'1" old school center and you can't do much beyond that? I don't know.
I do love that in Gavoni's latest mock draft, the whole intro is about how Scoot Henderson's still in play at number 2. And then he still puts Brandon Miller at number 2. I think that kind of tells you a little bit.
I read that this morning and got confused too.
Right. Like that's the whole lead of the article. And then it's like, nope, he's actually not moving up there.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.